Bringing a big money show co-host Taylor Riggs, along with National Review staff writer Caroline Downey. Caroline, let me start with you on this. So we're always fighting, right? There's no doubt about that. But what I'm concerned about, we'll put this chart up for the audience. Republicans and Democrat voters, top 5 issues. This is like we're on 2 different planets.
Yep.
Republicans, economy, immigration, terrorism, crime, taxes. Democrats, democracy in the U.S., types of Supreme Court justices, abortion, healthcare, and education. How do we ever get those to match? Like, how do we ever fix that?
You need the pollsters on the liberal coastal cities to actually go to these swing states and understand what voters are feeling. I don't often do this where we tout our own coverage because I don't think it's very becoming, but I want to give us a little bit of a pat on the back. We've been talking about a 47 record highs on the S&P 500 does not mean that people feel good. All the data that sometimes I highlight, frankly, to my discredit that you sort of poo-poo, doesn't always translate into what the average consumer is feeling on the ground, right? On an inflation-adjusted basis, the economy does not look good. Wages don't look good. The stock market doesn't look good after inflation. That's what people feel that isn't always picked up in sentiment polling.
Right. And I mean, democracy in the U.S., I think people who fan those flames are just doing everyone a disservice, to be honest with you.
And Charles, the preoccupation with threat to democracy is a luxury issue for at least half of this country. And the denialism from legacy media right now about how much inflation in the economy weighed into independent voters who absolutely determined this election into their calculus, it's just been completely dismissed. I saw one network claim that young men were victims of misinformation about the economy. So once again, they're refusing to look outside their ivory tower and see how the other half lives. The White House insisted ad nauseum, Charles, that inflation data was improving and that it was tempering.
Right.
But on the ground, it was still so real, and you can't argue with people on that.
Right. I mean, it's very, very frustrating. We're hundreds of millions of people. We put it all in a bucket, and it's so skewed. That's the irony. It's so skewed that the billionaires and the millionaires who have done extraordinarily well offset tens of thousands of people who are struggling. This brings me to this. We're going to do this real quick on the on support for election laws because we're trying to wonder what could be the next step that maybe both sides can move closer. And I'm thinking election laws, right? This Gallup poll on people who favor, requiring all people to provide photo ID. I've always thought that was a simple, low-hanging fruit. Maybe we can start there.
To me, it is. They didn't ask for my ID when I voted. It's a little surprising, right? But to me, low-hanging fruit, this is something I think we can all agree on to make sure that we've secure, safe, fast elections.
I don't know if it's misinformation, but I read somewhere that all the states where Harris won, there's no voter ID requirements.
I saw that.
Well, all I'll say is, Charles, remember Georgia? Remember they said it would be Jim Crow on steroids because of their election integrity law? Meanwhile, there was groundbreaking early turnout, and Georgia handedly went to Trump, and that's because people showed up in droves. Virginia, Glenn Youngkin received so much flack for trying to get those illegal aliens off the voter rolls, and Democrats resisted that effort vigorously. And the question is why? Why don't you want to improve the integrity of this process?
Post-election, I think, was really pissing me off the most is the same media that I think really did a terrible job because, to your point, we do have to pat ourselves on the back. I haven't seen between Fox News and Fox Business the effort to bring in liberals, the effort to bring in Democrats, the effort to have true, honest voices, not Republicans who hate Trump and say we got a Republican and a Democrat. We really tried. There's this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And essentially what they say is that the people who are really stupid don't know that they're stupid, and they believe they're smart, and they have this sort of peak area. And I think that these elitists and these folks in the media, they look at the audience, and they must think that the audience suffers from the Dunning-Kruger effect because they talk down to them so badly, again, ignoring the pain of the people. People saying, I'm in pain, they're like, you must have the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Do you think that this last night was a referendum on an elite class continuing to call over 50% of Americans dumb, garbage, stupid, your feelings aren't valid, the economy's great, you dumb-dumb. Maybe that was it. I don't know if the left will learn their lesson and not be so elitist and sort of come down to earth. That remains to be seen.
And that's the irony of the Dunning-Kruger effect, that you can say the stupid don't know how stupid they are, but I think the ones who really don't are the so-called elites, the so-called smart ones, the ones who went to Yale. They don't seem to get the message.
Right, and there's many Ivy League educated people that are just misinformed. It's possible to have all the degrees and credentialing in the world, Charles, and still not be all that bright or plugged into what's happening. I saw some commentary that this was an election of the uneducated holding the educated hostage. Hostage. I mean, really.
Yeah.
And you
if they really held them hostage, they would surround the Starbucks right now and deny them the avocado toast for 3 days. All right. Another thing, this cultural election thing, and the women kept coming up. Abortion, women's rights, and all that kind of stuff. The recent cover of Time magazine says the child-free life. I'm really concerned because I talk about the fertility crisis that we already see. It's crushing Europe. It's crushing Japan. I think Japan is at a point of no return. Now it's crushing China, which was on pace to perhaps catch us, but no longer. How do you feel about this being promoted as, you know, hey, it's so cool. Like, everyone has a prerogative. You don't have to have kids, but it's being promoted as the thing to do, a child-free life.
Two things. I am a new mother. Wouldn't change my life for anything. I have less free time, but it is so well worth it. Second point, J.D. Vance had a good response to this question in the debate, where he said the real problem is not access to abortions. It's not this. It's affordability. The affordability crisis has created this idea where I can't have more kids because I can't afford anything.
Right.
If you get the cost of everything down, we all have breathing room, then maybe I can talk to my husband and say, what do you think about a second kid or a third, right? The crux of the problem always comes down to affordability. Women don't have the choice to choose to have children because we can't afford anything.
And younger generations have long reported that they just feel it's too expensive to raise a child in this economy. And Charles, I'll say last night's data showed that there was this political polarization of the generations last night. Gen X handed Trump the election. Baby boomers, over half of them rejected Trump. What do we know about the household wealth in this country? Baby boomers have over half of it.
Right.
Millennials, 3%.
Right.
They feel like they can't raise children in this economy. And maybe now, if this economy starts to improve, that mindset will change.
Yeah, and that's sort of the conversation I had with Mike Green before you all came here. Like, how do we tweak capitalism? We all love capitalism, but the version that we've been in the last few years has overwhelmingly rewarded those who already have the most money. Taylor, Caroline, thank you both.
To be determined.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We're in a living experiment. I love it. All right.